Welcome to Dream Farm. On today's episode, we're going to go through the farm and talk about what we're going to plant in each of these areas. We learned a lot last year with the way the deer reacted to what we planted. We also had some weather issues with the late spring, early summer, midsummer drought. So I think we're going to make some better decisions as far as what we can put in different spots. We'll start here. We're on top of the ridge. This should be one of the, I would say, more critical plots on the whole farm because it's just surrounded by habitat, very isolated. We had corn and sorghum and pumpkins,
beans,
beans,
clover.
Whitetail Institute, whitetail clover. We had their winter greens planted up here. We just fought a lot of drought, and that made it tough because you'd plant something and it would fail and you'd rescue it and then that would struggle. But what we did find was that the deer liked the sorghum up here. So we're gonna go ahead.
Do you think the sorghum does better in dry conditions than corn does?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's pretty drought hardy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I know they planted in the Great Plains states where the corn probably wouldn't work.
Okay.
Some of those areas are pretty dry.
Yeah.
So this is going to be, I think we're going to simplify this. There's already one little band through the middle of the field of the Imperial Whitetail Clover. We're going to leave that. That should do pretty well. I mean, it's starting to pop up already, and we're in, it's like the 12th of March, maybe, something like that. It's already coming up good. So that one we're going to leave. Below it, I'm going to put in their alpha rack because alfalfa is also very drought hardy, and the deer really like it. So the alpha rack has got some chicory in it too, and I don't really know how our deer will react to the chicory. We'll find out, but I know they'll like the alfalfa. That's the plan for this one. I've got to get some soil samples here. Every plot that I go to, I'm going to sample again this year. We've sampled them in the past, but it really benefits to do it every year, especially when you're looking at pH, because you can put a bunch of lime down and then you don't really know how much effect that had.
Does it, in your experience, does it tend to vary much from year to year? Or since it was such a drought year, would you expect things to be pretty similar, or?
I don't know. I'm sure the stuff we did plant that grew would have taken something out of the soil, but you can always count on needing fertilizer.
Yeah.
It's just really a question on a lot of the stuff of pH and whether we need to keep adding lime and where we're at on lime, as far as, fixing that up. So this is the first one. We'll call this field 1, and we've got a bunch. So it's going to be, we'll move through it fairly quickly, but I think what you'll find in the conversation is really going to center around a couple of things, and that is how much corn or the lack thereof that we're going to plant this year, and then the focus on beans in a lot of areas, and then how we can use those beans as maybe a first layer to go into if they don't do well, if the deer eat them during the summer or whatever, we can come back into those and we can do a nice job of rescuing those with the winter greens and some of the other blends that we've got from Whitetail Institute. Hopefully we get some rain and everything can grow this year. So yeah, let's wrap this one up and we'll move on to field number 2. Dream Farm is brought to you by Whitetail Institute Food Plot Blends, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail App, Hoyt Archery, Wildlife Farming, and PH Outdoors. Before we leave this ridgetop, I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to plant this too. With the sorghum, that will go in with the PH Outdoors drill and no-till into the corn stubble, and that'll work good.
And the advantage of no-till is less erosion, right?
Well, that and you don't have to disturb it so the moisture doesn't dry out.
I see.
So if you have dry conditions at all, you preserve as much moisture as you can.
I gotcha.
And that way you get germination quicker usually, and you don't have to wait for a rain. No-till is just a really nice way to do it. Plus you don't have the added effort time of having to till. And I think I can just broadcast the alpha rack. I think I can just see that on top of the ground. I need to look at it a little bit closer. I believe what's in there are annuals right now that would be pretty easy to kill once the alfalfa gets going. Otherwise I could come in and till it and then or spray it and kill it and then start from scratch. But it'd be nicer to be able to just put it on top of the ground.
Right. Because what side of the field is that going on? Where the...
It'd be the side where the wintergreens was last
Okay,
year.
gotcha.
So I think everywhere that we had corn and sorghum last year is going to be sorghum this year. And then that green strip, we call it, and say, is going to be the imperial whitetail clover. It's already there, and then alpha rack. We're going to put pumpkins around a lot of our plots, which will be kind of fun because we did have some success with that last year here on this one.
They were some nice pumpkins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even despite the drought, we got
Yeah.
pumpkins. The key to the soil sampling on a plot like this is to get multiple locations within the plot and then get a little bit of dirt from each one and then mix it up, and that's what you send in. I send these to Whitetail Institute, and they actually have an app. It's pretty cool. It's called Plot Perfection, and you can purchase that. I'll put a link in the description, and you can purchase that, and it actually, you can map out your farm, and it will keep a history for you within that app of the different nutrients, pH level, whatever of each of your plots. So you map it out, and each time you send a soil sample in, it will register that to that plot, which again is really cool. But the key to this, or the key thing, is you really do need to sample it every year. And I'm going to do one side where I'm putting the alfalfa into, the alpha rack. I'm going to do the other side where I'm putting the sorghum into, because they may need different things depending on what you're going to plant. We're at our second location, and this is just down from the ridge where we were at first. There's a little valley here that I got into shape last summer, and I used a wildlife farming soil conditioner to kind of do the final prep work on it and get it ready for what I knew I was going to plant in there this year, and that's corn. I had the winter greens last year that I broadcast into it, and then did a little bit of drilling in there too with the no-till drill, and got a really nice stand, super nice stand of winter greens in there. So this should be a perfect spot for corn this year. It's about, I'm looking at it, if the football field's an acre, Jordan, it's about 1.25 acres maybe, looking at it. It's out in front of us here. So that'll be corn. One of the few plots I'm going to plant into corn down in the valley. And then that one, I'm sure it's going to need a lot of inputs to make it grow well, just because, well, I mean, our farm tends to be pretty neutral on pH overall.
Because of all the lime?
No, just naturally. Huh. So I mean, we've only had to put lime on one field so far, but so hopefully.
Right, the natural lime?
Oh, the limestone, you mean?
Yeah, because the soil is, so it's mostly limestone up here.
Yeah, that could be why, for sure. But it tends to be fairly neutral. But behind us is a little, maybe 1/4 acre plot, and that's going into the Whitetail Institute Imperial Whitetail Clover. So I'm going to go ahead and frost seed that right now. I killed that late last summer, early fall, and I can broadcast that now, and it will still do a really nice job of getting started this spring. I may have to come back and hit it with some herbicides. If it's any annual broadleaves, you can mow it out to clean up your clover. But if you get grasses, then you need to spray it generally to get that competition out. And so now we're talking about, again, the overall strategy is to have a little bit of everything on the farm. And this is going to be one of the few spots of corn. Perfect spot for it. We can, hopefully it'll pull deer into the valley, and we'll see, maybe it won't. I mean, it didn't last year on the other plot, but I want to have a lot more clover this year. Last year I didn't have hardly any. So you're going to notice as we go around, there's going to be a lot more clover I'm putting on the farm. And that's super important because the deer can eat that during the summer, to get the protein source. They'll eat it clear into the fall until you get a couple really, really hard freezes on it, and then it'll start to wither down. That's one of the first things that greens up in the spring too, so they can get right back on it.
Because that is perennial?
Yeah. And some of this blend that Whitetail Institute puts out has got some pretty good longevity to it. Normally you're looking at 3 years, and then you got to rotate into something else for a year. But I believe this blend will do a little bit better than that. We're on to our next spot. We're going to call this one plot 1, 2, 3, plot 4. So we're getting creative with our naming here. This one we're going to break into 2 plantings. Last year this was in beans, and then I drilled with that PH Outdoors no-till drill the winter greens in late July. it did really, really well here too. I mean, that stuff did awesome everywhere I planted it. But anyway, the other end is going to be beans, and I'm hoping that it will do well on its own. But if it did like last year, where with the drought and then the deer, the deer pressure, I ended up having to rescue it, we have that option. But this end is going to be corn, and I need to keep a little bit of corn on the farm. I'm not going to shut it out completely because it does serve a purpose. It is most years their preferred wintertime food.
There is a commercial cornfield right here to our right.
Yeah.
Also.
Right. So that, once they harvest it, there'll still be some waste grain in there for them to kind of pick through. But that'll be gone, shortly, within a month for sure. And then having this little patch of corn here would be nice to carry through the winter. Plus it's real close to the buildings, and if it works, it'd be a real handy late season hunt. Then straight ahead of us, starting about 50 yards in front of the four-wheeler, there's an area with a levee, and then it drops off into like a little dip. That's going to be clover too. So that's another spot that's going to be the imperial whitetail clover.
What's the difference between clover that just grows on its own and then the stuff that the Whitetail Institute stuff you plant?
Yeah, good point, because on the ridge we were talking about the wild clover, and people are probably wondering why we don't just leave that.
Yeah.
It generally doesn't produce as large of leaves. It's not as palatable. It's not as high in protein. So the more evolved blends, like the Whitetail Institute, those guys have been doing that for a really long time. So they're trying to find the absolute best clovers possible. We are now at plots 6 and 7. And 6 is the one that everybody would remember if they followed bow hunting whitetails. This is the scrape tree. It's right behind us. This has been a really good spot over the past couple of years. Well, I should say it has the potential to be a really good spot. It was really good in 22 season. Last season was a little bit rough. But we've chronicled the fact that the deer didn't eat much of the corn in this valley. There's probably 3.5 acres of food plot down here. So I've got to do something different. 22, I had it in beans and the deer loved it. 23, it was in corn, and either because of the preference for something else or the fact there was so many acorns, they just didn't eat this corn. They're eating it now. I mean, there's definitely, they're still working on it.
Yeah, when we were driving in, it looked like there were at least a lot of half-eaten ears versus when we checked it a month or so ago, and it was just a ton of ears that hadn't even been touched yet. At least it looks like they're starting to make some progress on it.
Yeah, they're still eating it. It'll be a month before I do anything with this from a planting standpoint, so they can eat some more. So I'm going to break it up. The main part of this is going to be in beans. So if you look at it coming up the valley from the pond, it'd be the west side all the way up, and then the bulk of the plot is going to be beans. And just this little side hill behind me is going to be corn.
And we talked about that kind of on the drive over here, but the reasoning there is for screening and making entry and exit easier.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, yes. And I think I will, sometime in the next month or so, plant some hybrid willow down through the valley too. So that will long-term help with that. But yeah, you're right. And also I do want some corn in here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's just a half an acre or whatever that ends up being over there, maybe 3/4. It still keeps some corn scattered around the farm in case we overreacted to the fact that I didn't eat it last year,
Right.
which I think we might have in some ways because of all the acorns. So beans, the bulk of the plot, corn, a little spot behind me. And again, I like the beans because they give you the option if they don't really work out that well, and even if they do, of coming back in and broadcasting the winter greens, or another one from Whitetail Institute we've used is their tall tine tubers blend. So you get the chance to really create 2 layers of food. One other footnote, there is a side hill in front of us, and we're going to call it maybe an 1/8 of an acre max, 1/10 of an acre maybe, that we planted acorns in there in November of 22. They just didn't grow. I don't know if it's because we went too deep, don't know, but they didn't grow.
These ones didn't grow then?
No, not on this end. So rather than reseeding this to acorns again when we did it in October of 23, I just left it, and I'm going to put that into clover. So the Whitetail Institute Imperial Whitetail Clover, boom, beans, and then corn. So this valley is going to have 3 different food sources and should be really attractive. I think we're up to plot number 7 or 8. 8?
I think it's 8.
Yeah. Plot number 8 is along the driveway. I've decided to put this whole thing into beans this year, except the very upper end. As you get closer to the buildings, I'm going to put that into sorghum. And I might need to find a couple more spots to put sorghum in too, because the deer seemed like they really liked it last year, and we don't have a lot of it going in. We're going to really lean toward beans. Beans, I like them because, again, I've talked about it. You can layer them. You can spread other stuff into them once they start to mature, so you can get beans and wintergreens, or something like that. So it's that's the upside of beans, and they're not too expensive as long as the soil is fairly fertile. You don't have to fertilize them nearly like you do sorghum and corn, because they don't need nitrogen. So anyway, this section is going to be mostly beans with sorghum on the upper end. The deer really do like it. They love the beans. So I think to make the farm as good as possible, I need to have more beans this year than last year. I really do think that we can really hold them during the summer better too with beans here. They really like the protein that's available in the beans. They must be really tasty and palatable, because it's hard to get them out of the bean plots once they start eating it. Plot number 9 is this little small 1/4 acre max. I call it a staging area food plot, and I did a recent episode about it where I was talking about creating the perfect bedding area buck trap. So you can go back and look at that, and you can see more about the why and how of creating this spot. But I've got to figure out what to put in here, and I don't think it'll get done this spring because there's just still too much soil prep work to be taken care of first. A bunch of stumps in here, a lot of roots. It's real unlevel and uneven. I don't want to plant this and then have to deal with all that stuff when I come back to mow around it or plant around it or whatever, later. So I want to get this into shape first. So this may not be something that I plant even this spring at all. It might be a summertime planting, which means it would be a brassica blend like the wintergreens probably, is what will end up in here. I just don't see with my time, and it's possible, but it's just so many projects to do here. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get to this one and do justice to really getting it prepped in time to catch the spring planting window. So I'm still going to get my soil sample here, but I doubt it will be planted until summer. We are now at the intersection of plots 10 and 11. We're getting up on top here where the wind is pounding us. So if you're hearing wind noise on the microphone, I apologize for that. This is the spot we call the open gate. And on this side of it, which would be the east side, it's we made this plot last summer, and we haven't had a chance to get it planted well. I need to broadcast the Whitetail Institute Imperial Whitetail Clover into this plot today. It's maybe half acre, maybe a little bit more than that. And on the other side, on the field side of the open gate, we're going to have about an 1.5 acre plot there. So that'll be one of our mainstays for feeding deer, beyond just during the hunting season. So I think on this one, 1.5 acre plot, I think I'll do 1 acre of beans and then 1/2 acre of sorghum on that side. And then again, we've talked plenty about the versatility of the beans. So I think that will be a really good mix. I think that will give the deer something to be maybe more drawn to than just more corn, when you've got a pretty vast area of corn already. So that's the plan here. I really like this spot. I mean, we've talked about it over and over. We love hunting here. Anytime you've got something like this open gate that funnels the deer, kind of naturally through a bottleneck, makes for easier hunting. Plus, it's just a great spot for a nice, clean 10, 15 yard shot. I'm going to combine plots 12 and 13 together in one interview here, and then wrap up from this spot. This is there's 2 plots back here on the end of this ridge. This is an area that we haven't got a lot of hunting time here other than Jordan did.
Oh, we got a lot of hunting time here.
Yeah.
Like, we spent my whole 2022 season here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't very good. There was a few deer around, but we're going to change it up. It was corn that year. Last year I tried to put beans in here, but they droughted out. So I'm going to put the same formula as we did in plot number 11 here. 1/3 sorghum, 2/3 beans. And that will give us some versatility.
Because this is plot 12.
This is 12. Yep.
Yeah.
11 was the one by the open gate.
Yeah.
That was when we did 1/3 sorghum, 2/3 beans. We're
Yep.
going to do the same thing on 12 and 13.
I see.
Yep. So 13 is the one that's the last one that we're going to show you.
Mhm.
And we'll do them, like I said, we'll do them both from here. These are, they're pretty good sized plots. So I think we can put a lot of food here. You know, plenty of food that when the winter comes, there'll be a lot here for the deer to carry through the winter. Plenty of, you know, possible food source for the late season hunting too.
Mhm.
So I will put a band of clover around the outside edge closest to the timber on both of these. That will create that little buffer where the deer might come out during the early season and give us some opportunities maybe in early October back on some of these. But the primary food source here is going to be grain.
Mhm.
Well, I'm going to wrap it up here. Gosh, we had 13 plots,
Mhm.
and I know we'll probably do a couple more before the summer's over. We'll probably maybe create a couple more. So these 13 plots range probably from about, on the small end, 1/4 of an acre, on the upper end, maybe 3 to 3.5 acres. I think grand total we're in the 20 to 25, might be 25 plus acres by now.
Don't you have a ratio that you kind of go by of food to timber?
Yeah, I mean, I like it to be, it'd be nice in an area without a lot of other food to be as much as 10% of food, you know, permanent, but we're going to be around 5 thereabouts, but there's an awful lot of food around us too.
Right.
So there's plenty of food scattered around that the commercial farming kind of takes in.
Mhm.
So we complement that with roughly 5% total in year-round food.
Mhm.
Well, that's going to be it for this week. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you right back here soon for the next episode of Dream Farm, and remember to always
Dream big.